Manager at Climate Tracker Asia. We are a global networking platform where we work with journalists and content creators and climate storytellers working towards our mission. This particular session is our community hangout, where we're just going to be discussing creating climate content in Southeast Asia. What are the challenges that we're facing? What are the kind of strategies that we should be working towards? And as a bonus, towards the end, we also have something super exciting for you. It's an opportunity and fellowship that we're running, and we hope that it would be helpful and beneficial for you. To break the ice, I would request all of you to just get on your laptops and keyboards and maybe type out of the chat box your most used app on your phone. When we're talking about content and consuming content and creating content, I think a lot of us are spending a lot of time on different social media apps via our phones, via our laptops, and other devices. So, what are these apps which are taking so much of our times? What are the kind of content that we're consuming? Are we going to these apps to get inspired, to get entertained, or are we always looking for something to get educated about? It could be a trending topic, maybe a trending choreography that's going viral, or is it a news site that we want to follow? I can see Instagram. Well, that would be the same for me. I think Instagram takes up a lot of the screen time overall in the day. Despite many times we try to, put all those reminders. X and Twitter, however we're calling it now, is another platform. YouTube, definitely. YouTube, I feel when it comes to YouTube, it's also because long form content, it becomes difficult to keep a track of time of how many hours or minutes that have been spent on that app. One video after the other, the loop cycle goes on and on. We still have some people joining in. Hello, everybody who's joined in new. We're joined in this session. We're going to be discussing climate content creation with focusing largely in Southeast Asia. I am from India, so I'm incredibly excited and curious to know all our speaker panels, Puka, Ushar, and Gaea are here with us today. What do they have to say about content creation scene? How is it different when it differs from regions? And I'm particularly excited to get to know more about what it is like to be a content creator out there. We're dropping our most used apps on the phone answers in the chat box. If I have to quickly comprise, I think Instagram gets the most amount of votes, followed in good competition by TikTok, and Twitter/X and YouTube are equal contenders up here. Yes. And I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome our brilliant speakers for today, Ushar, Kharishar, and Gaea, who've joined us today. Hello, welcome everyone. So excited to have you here today, and also very keen to listen to all your experiences, your work, and your respective professions, the stories, and also your experience as associated with the Climate Tracker Asia team. I'd also like to welcome Vienna. Hello.
Hello,
We'd like to,
everyone.
yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Benna. I'm the Asia Director for Climate Tracker. So, I basically kind of like run the show, but not really because I'm more like, uh, the person working for every one of you because we're the ones actually doing the hard work in raising funding so we can actually offer more and more opportunities for our network. And we're very, very happy today because we are gathered here with some of our former fellows who are now our mentors, Ushar, Kuka, and Gaea, will be talking about their experience, talking about why this fellowship will be important to all of you, and why do you think that being part of the Climate Tracker Network will actually be beneficial for your career. Let's just give you a background of what we do in Climate Tracker. We are an organization of journalists for journalists. Our mission is to really incentivize and train young journalists around the world to do compelling and empower them to do and produce impactful narratives around climate change in their communities. We have a network of storytellers and journalists and advocates around Asia, Latin America, and Africa. For this specific program, please change. Sorry. So next slide, please. So for this specific program, what we do is we wanted to empower storytellers that are not journalists. We specifically designed this to support young storytellers in reshaping climate narratives in our region and to raise more awareness in inspire individual action. We call this project Climate Stories for Change under the Content Creators Hub. If you want, you can actually go and take a look at our first cycle, which started in the Philippines. You can take a look at our microsite, climatestoriesforchange.com. In 2022, we work closely with 12 content creators in the Philippines. One of them is with us right now. Celine is actually has moved into a part of the Climate Tracker Asia team as well as one of our as our fellowship coordinator, and she will also be working with you um once you get chosen into this program. So what we do in this program is not just write stories. We were able to produce artworks, murals, poetry, video, and social media to humanize the impacts of climate change and highlight local solutions around the community. And having said that, I'm really, really happy to welcome all of you in our network and hope you apply to this fellowship. Aish will actually tell you how to do that and how to ace that application. So I'm turning it over to all of you and really, really happy and excited to learn a thing or two from Gaea, Ushar, and Kuka. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing us to that, Vienna. The Climate Stories for Change is part of the outputs of the Digital Content Creators Hub, where there's no bar to the creativity and the kind of stories that we're producing. These can be from a visual, audio, textual, or a multimedia-based design. But before we go and delve deeper into that, I would like to begin with Ushar, and I would like to basically open the floor for her. And so, what is the content creation scene currently looking like? What are the kind of stories that people are focusing on? And are there any top platforms that we should be focusing to produce these pieces and distributing them? Over to you, Ushar. What does it
Thank
currently
you.
look like out there?
Thank you very much, Aishwarya, and thank you very much to everyone who actually joined us today for this hangout that is, I understand, will be very beneficial for all of you if you're interested to create content. So back to the question, what does the content creation scene currently look like? I think it's thriving. Content creation scene when it comes to climate storytelling is currently thriving. Why? Because we have a massive group of Gen Zs who are always out there looking to create content and tell stories. And this is not just news reporting. This is content created by regular people. You can tell stories. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be a journalist to tell stories. If you are really, really passionate about telling content, you telling stories involving climate. So, top platforms for publishing and distribution. First, I'd like to thank Aishwarya for actually asking that question, or what app that you're usually on. For me, I am usually on Instagram. I'm also always on X or Twitter, whichever you decide to call, but I'm also on TikTok. So these platforms are actually a goldmine for you to not only produce content, but to also get inspiration for content and stories that you actually want to tell. Because, for example, if you go onto Instagram, if you look at Washington Post, they have a specific account called Post Climate that tells stories involving climate change. And it doesn't have to be difficult things, that it really doesn't have to be complicated things if you do want to create content involving climate, because these are like a few tips that I can share with you when you want to create short, snappy content. Because with content, it can be multiple platforms. You can either put together a vertical video if you're confident and you'd like to speak in front of the camera. Vertical videos are your way to go. Second, you can always just go on Canva and create really pretty and very eye-catching posters that you can turn it into content, because either way, words do have impact if you can concise it and make sure that whatever content that you put out there is relevant. It has to be relevant content. And when you look at content between Malaysia, Philippines, as well as Indonesia, I think there are similarities. There are a lot of similarities that we could share, and you could actually expand it to a more regional storytelling rather than focusing on your country alone. You can also put it on a whole regional angle where you can tell a story from your hometown or even from your neighborhood, but you could also find stories that would relate back, and then you can find similar stories in Indonesia, similar stories in the Philippines. Yeah, language, we definitely do not speak the same language, but I think the struggles when it comes to climate impact is the same. We are always looking, I personally are always looking for content and story to tell, even if it's not news articles. Sometimes I'm very interested to read and understand what other people are saying. And this could be from NGOs. You just need to be really, really curious enough to go and look for topics to talk about. So first, it's relevance. You have to create content that is relevant to not only your home country, but also the region, because then you'll be able to create more impact and a bigger impact in a bigger sphere rather than just in your country. And second, this is difficult even for me to keep it concise and short, because yes, while writing 1,500 words is really cool because you can expand your story, but being able to keep it short and sweet is where you are able to get the impact and get your viewers and your readers to understand. So second is the third story is of course, we want positive solution stories rather than really depressing stories or content that would tell you that things are bad. Yeah, things are bad. We know things are bad. Things are only going to get worse if we do not put hope out there. So if you can find solution-based stories, if you can find voices that gives you solution rather than talk about the problem, which you should not ignore, you should talk about the problem, but also find solutions around it, you'd get a lot more people coming back to your profile. And it doesn't really matter if you want to put it out on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, on X, on Twitter. It really doesn't matter, as long as you can let people relate back to the content that you want to put out there. And then the next is, of course, avoid misleading terminology. We do not want to use very difficult science words, because I, for one, sometimes struggle as well to not use difficult words when I tell stories. But if you can find a way to tell and simplify terminology, that is a sure way for you to get a lot of hits on your content. So the next is, when we talk about climate, obviously it's a global issue, but we can also look at it at a very regional perspective. So yes, we can talk about the stories in Malaysia, we can talk about the stories in Indonesia and the Philippines, but if you can connect the struggles together, your content is going to get all the traction and all the attention that it needs. And also you need to remember, a lot of the content that is being put out on social media is not only consumed by slightly older people, millennials like me, older millennials like me, but Gen Zs. I think how Gen Zs view certain issues and they view climate specifically, the youth viewing climate, they take it very seriously. So if you can put out content that they can relate and understand, it is easier for you to get traction and you can get more engagement on the content you put out there because they understand it. It's amazing now working, you know, in an industry where I actually do enjoy working with Gen Z reporters, with the youth, because really you guys see the world very differently, and how you tell your stories is also very compelling because there's a lot of passion that comes with it, rather than just someone who's chasing paycheck after paycheck. This comes pure passion. And of course, you can, from finding solutions and telling stories about climate, what you can do as well is you can reach out to people within the community. You could reach out to scientists, you could reach out to anyone. You could even reach out to me if you would want to find a concrete action that can come from this problem that you highlighted, because there are a lot of people out there who really, really want to talk about social stories involving climate, social stories involving youth, indigenous communities, and all you have to do is just be curious. All you really have to do is be curious and want to tell stories. So challenges, obviously there are a lot of challenges, including for myself, because I am also a freelance producer and a freelance journalist. So finding jobs is definitely, it's tough, but it's not impossible. I've been freelancing since 2017. I still haven't thrown in the towel, so I don't think any one of you should. I think finding jobs is not so much of an issue if you have great content that you want to put out there, because trust me, even if you go on social media, Instagram got the highest vote of like the biggest number of users amongst us, right? So with Instagram, it's so easy to just DM a company, Greenpeace, for example. If you have a story that you want to tell and it aligns with the vision and mission of Greenpeace, I think they're more than happy to work with you. And I mean, if a creative content creators like each and every one of you who would be a part of this or would want to take this to the next level, you'll definitely find ways to find people and network with agencies that would really, really be happy to work with you, even if it's just for social media content. Because the reality is there are more people who consumes content on social media rather than news agencies now. So social media really is a goldmine of where you can build your reputation as a content creator, and then from content creator you can move on to a multimedia journalist, and the world is your oyster. So pitching to publications, while news is also very important, because news networks, when you publish articles on credible news websites, these articles can make or break policies in your country, and that is where you get the biggest chunk of the concrete action that you will be able to put out there for your country, for your community. So pitching to publications, of course, you would need the same steps. You would definitely need to concise your story brief, make sure it's really short, tell the editor how you would like to tell the stories, because sometimes it doesn't really have to be just an article. It can be a multimedia piece. It can be a photo essay. It can be a vertical video. And one place I think that is always looking for Gen Z based content and vertical videos where you can actually be the face for a story that you want to tell, is Vice Asia. I think Vice Asia is a wonderful place where you can tell climate stories, but at a very cultural angle. And I think that's a fantastic way of telling stories, rather than going the whole policy, going through research. While you do have to do that to make sure that you are factually right, but you can also tell stories involving climate in a very fun, uplifting way. And I think Vice Asia is one place that you could look into. And if not, seriously, work on your local brand, your social brand, build up your name, create all the content that you can, and trust me, someone will notice it, an agency will notice it and will want to collaborate with you. So yeah, I think I've taken 10 minutes of my allocated time for now. I'm going to pass it over back to Aishwarya, but I think we'll have a Q&A later if anyone has questions.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Ushar, for pointing out such incredible angles up here. I think that you mentioned mixing different kind of beats with climate, that you, like the example of Vice Asia that you gave, of looking at climate from a cultural angle, and when it comes to climate change, it is something that's affecting us on a daily basis. So while it is a very dedicated beat in itself, there's also so many different angles that we should incorporate. There could be travel, there could be policy, education, lifestyle. A lot of different aspects of our lives and our day are being affected and as a result of climate change. So I'd like to move to Gaea now. She is a journalist herself, and she's also mentored a journalist as a part of Climate Tracker Asia, been through these fellowships. Yeah, what do you think? How do we create these climate content around climate change, and what are the stories, and how should we basically focus on mixing the two things together? Over to you, Kia.
Right. Thank you, Ushar. Sorry, can you guys hear me? Am I audible? Yeah, okay, great. So, hi everyone, I'm Gay. I'm a journalist based here in the Philippines. So, before I answer Aish's question, I would just like to say that we all know that the science is clear that the climate crisis is the biggest and most urgent threat not only to the environment but also to humankind. And this crisis requires everyone to act fast. Everyone, so journalists, storytellers, and content creators like you can contribute to this fight against climate change using our skills, knowledge, and we can also influence decision makers and ordinary people. And when we do that kind of influencing, we can probably inspire them and initiate collaboration, initiate action. So I'm gonna share some steps for you to create effective content about climate change, although Ushar has mentioned some of them during her talk. First, of course, you need to understand the basics of climate change before you make content. Learn its causes, its impacts, and potential solutions. So please do not create content about something that you cannot fully grasp. That's very dangerous. Remember that your content has to be accurate and backed by science. So as Bashar said, be curious, or you have to read a lot, research. So what are the reliable sources that you can tap when you're doing your research about these topics? First, of course, the reports of the IPCC, and then you can also read reputable scientific journals. They're available online, and you can also ask scientists. It doesn't hurt to ask questions. Ask them to explain a climate change concept in a way that ordinary people will easily comprehend, so that by doing these steps you can provide your audience with up-to-date and reliable info, so you will not perpetrate any kind of misinformation or disinformation. So yeah, while you do your research, you will also stumble on stats, studies, and real world examples of climate change. So you can add this to make your content more credible. And yeah, Uchar mentions something about the platforms. So you have to of course, it's important that you choose the format of your content. It can be, videos for Gen Z's, podcast, social media post. So you have to make your content tailored to your target audience for you to be able to connect easily. Yeah. So when choosing a topic, uh, remember that climate change does not only affect the environment and economies, it affects many aspects of our lives. I'm sorry, I'm trying to raise my voice because maybe you can hear the background. I'm sorry for that. Um, but yeah, so we know that the climate crisis affects many aspects of our lives. First, our health, our well-being, our homes, our rights as humans, our future. So yeah, it's not really hard to find a topic that is related to climate change. So you can focus on climate science. You want to do if you're very knowledgeable of the science behind climate change, you can do that. Um, of course, impacts on climate change on your daily lives so that people can easily relate. Climate justice, how marginalized communities are disproportionately being affected by climate impacts. You can also focus on solutions. So it would not just be, doom and gloom. Of course, it's important that we highlight the seriousness of the problem, but we must also give our audience, something to look forward to, something that, for them to believe that climate change, we can actually, address this climate change because we can actually can. We just have to work together. Global, I mean, all of us here in this planet. What else? Yeah, you can also, showcase local efforts, community-based efforts, like what is your village doing to, you know, to combat climate change. Yeah. So now you have this potential topics, you have this knowledge about climate change. So how can you now create a compelling narrative? So remember that the climate crisis is first and foremost a human story. So yeah, personal stories and anecdotes can help you connect with your audience. It can make your content more engaging. And yeah, what else? Okay. So yeah, remember that um content creators disseminate information to a wider audience, and sometimes um people turn to content creators more than they turn to journalists like us, especially those who spend a lot of time on, TikTok or on Facebook or on YouTube. So yeah, and content creators also shape public opinion. So it's very essential that they receive the right training to maintain credibility, accuracy, and ethical standards. So yeah, of course, content creators will need to learn journalism methods. Sorry, first would be data gathering so that your content will be informed. So your content will be accurate, and then yeah, you all content creators also need to learn how to do fact check, especially now that misinformation and disinformation are very prevalent on social media, so that we can avoid errors and misinformation and disinformation. uh Content creators also need to learn more about the responsibility of providing fair and well-sourced content, and a proper training will also ensure that content creators will um can shape public discourse in a very responsible manner. So yeah, that's why Climate Tracker has this program, this content creators hub. It's where content creators can learn from journalists. So we can share what we have picked up from years of doing this work to so that we can guide a new batch of content creators, of responsible content creators. So yeah, so basically Climate Tracker Content Creators Hub will provide that kind of training. Here we will equip you with skills, with resources to produce not only science-based content, but also content that is um powerful, content that is very engaging. Then so last year, I think Vienna or Aish mentioned this briefly. We trained 12 fellows from the Philippines to communicate how climate change is impacting their community. So that's those 12 fellows did not only come from Manila, the capital, but also from across the country. So their content highlight local solutions also. So yeah, we worked with a conservation storyteller, that's Celine, who is now with us at Climate Tracker. We also worked with traditional and digital artists. So this artist produced thought-provoking videos on I think one did something about the intersection of climate change and gender. So that's very, very nice. And then another fellow created a mural with kids. So it's very participative. Also, it involved the community. We also have a content creator who is also an indigenous peoples activist. So through his content, he was able to, highlight the plight of indigenous peoples here in the country. And we also work with an LGBTQ plus activist. So it's very nice because um that the fellow she's also a drag artist. So yeah, that fellow created content about climate change while doing drag, and then a series of TikTok on the intersection of climate change and health. So it's very creative, it's very fun. So yeah. So basically this program will be a combination of online sessions, hands-on mentoring. We have mentors from Malaysia, Ushar, and from Indonesia, that's Huka, and in-person training. So yeah, we're very excited to welcome you here in the Philippines by I think January next year. So in this program, we aim to foster a community of very talented individuals who do not only, raise awareness about climate change, about its seriousness and solutions, but also inspire people to take action. So yeah, thank you, Aish.
Thank you so much, Nia. I think one of the most excellent points that you've made is when it comes to content creation, there's also a big responsibility that comes with us when we are stepping up into those shoes. We're also becoming the opinion leaders. We're also becoming the bridging the gap between people who will be consuming that and taking that place of a person who's bringing that knowledge, bringing that information, putting it all together. And Usha's also pointed out the different kinds of contents that one can create. It doesn't have to be limited to a textual story. It could be a video. It could be a TikTok video. It could be a YouTube, a longer vlog, maybe an explainer one. So I would like to divert all of this towards Kuka, and no pressure. But what do you think with all of these options available of different kinds of platforms, different forms of content creation when it comes to storytelling? What combining all of this together, what will make a good climate story that as budding content creators we should focus on?
Okay, thank you, Aish. Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yeah, like now with all of these technologies, we have like, I don't know, thousands perhaps of options of telling the climate stories, which is great because, like in the past, perhaps we're just limited to the text stories. And sometimes telling climate stories in text is just boring because we have to like explain difficult concepts like the scientific or technical concepts in text, which takes long, so much space that maybe your attention can be diverted to something else other than stories. So yeah, we're really grateful to have these, lots of options so we can tell the, climate stories or climate issues in so much more interesting way. Like, for example, I have some examples. Let me share my screen. Okay, so like this one story. This one I did this in 2019. It's basically a mix of text and multimedia. So because I wrote for the website and paper, so I still have to work on the text. So this is the mix of text and other multimedia stuff. So for these stories, this is a story about the like massive coastal erosion in Central Java, one province in Indonesia. So we combine text with like we have the video here. It's a 10-minute video stories, if I'm not mistaken. And then like for this one story, I also incorporate the like interactive map to illustrate where is the where the locations of the affected villages, the ones that affected by the coastal erosions. And then here I use the time lapse from the Google Maps to show the change of the land. So as you can see here, that the land is eroded by the seawater, and it happens over the year. Like just imagine that if we just tell this in the text, it's gonna be like boring, and you might divert your attention to something else when I finish explaining in the text. So this is just one example. I still have like several things. Like this is one thing that my colleague made. So she wrote about the peatlands, but she's incorporating this story maps thing. So she puts a lot of pictures and just like small amount of text. So she's still telling the stories while giving like illustrations of what does the how the peatland looks like, and what kinds of destructions that the peatlands experience. Or something that I also like is the YouTube video, because everyone is, and I think some of us are tuning into YouTube regularly every day. So like on top of my mind, I have this one YouTube creator. Her name is Cleo Abram. She was a former journalist with Vox. So when she left Vox, she decided to create a YouTube channel focusing on the climate and also like technology explainer. So basically, she produced videos explaining about technologies and climate issues. Like this one video where she tries to explain the needs of clean energy to fulfill our future and like present energy needs. What I like from Cleo is she incorporates, I mean, like she talks to the camera while also incorporate like other elements like the graphics and even like archival things to make the videos more interesting. So yeah, I'll just show you the video.
As long as most of our energy comes from fossil fuels, and it does, we're in kind of a trap.
It's a trap!
Using less is the only real option to slow climate change. And throughout my life, we haven't had the technologies that would allow us to replace fossil fuels. You know what, actually, let's do this outside.
So, as you can see from that video, she uses this graph, this chart, which I also use in my story, but she created an animated version of the chart, which makes it more interesting. And then she also used like memes and like other archival things to make the videos more interesting. Yeah, that's what I like. And Cleo also, she's not only focused on the YouTube. She also builds her brands on Instagram. So she makes short videos or short reels like this.
Carbon capture system inside a 30-story apartment tower in Manhattan. It's very cool. So here's how this works. The carbon dioxide in the building's gas boilers is converted into a liquid and then trucked to a concrete factory where the carbon is mixed with cement and then sealed away into blocks that can be used to build stuff. It currently captures 60% of the boiler.
Yeah, maybe it's too long. So basically she's telling that about this one special type of concrete that like captures or absorbs the like carbon emissions from the atmosphere. So it's just I'm just showing you that it's also we can do this multimedia storytelling not only in the like traditional or mainstream platform, but also like in social media. Yeah, like you can do a 1-minute storytelling, 1-minute climate storytelling on Instagram or TikTok, or I don't use TikTok, so it doesn't come on top of my mind. So yeah, with all this multimedia, you can do basically anything. There's also like a podcast talking about climate, so you can do basically do anything. But I think the most important thing is the story. I mean, like regardless of what platform or what multimedia elements that you use, the most important thing is the story. So if you have a accurate or compelling stories, just like what Gaea said and Ushar said about the accurate stories, yeah, that's the most important thing. I mean, like if you don't have compelling or accurate stories, then all of these multimedia elements is just can go to waste, I guess. So yeah, what's important is that you have a good story, interesting stories, and accurate stories, and you can only get those kinds of stories if you are following the issues, be curious, ask questions, read a lot, like really a lot, books, articles, listen to podcasts, I think, and then you get inspired and to find some interesting stories, and yeah, and in climate issues, in climate beat, that's what we call the the issues in journalism. It's important for you to follow the every updates and developments on the issue, so you can find like, for example, really cool technology to mitigate the climate change, like the special concrete that Cleo Abrams said in her videos, and also like try to, as best as you can, to be connected with various people like NGOs, scientists, or like communities, or even like other journalists or science communicators, because especially in climate, you can learn literally from anyone. So yeah, it's good to have this multimedia, but compelling story is what we need on climate storytelling. So I guess that's all. Over to you, Aish.
Thank you so much. I personally loved how you explained us the entire Cleo's example. I've followed Cleo's work as well. And as Samantha has also mentioned, her move from Vice to being the independent producer for YouTube and her show Huge If True was very insightful to look at from a content creator's perspective also, of how like Ushar mentioned, that you could be working for agencies, but you could also be working freelance in a freelance model and making content independently upon your own. Mariam has a question here. How does one create those animated infographics and animations?
Unfortunately, I cannot answer that because I'm still learning, to produce those animations. Technically speaking, I mean, like these video producers usually use what is it, I forget the name, but the Adobe software that you use to animate things. So yeah, that's basically how they do it. But I guess there are also like some other online tools out there that can help creating those animations. I guess the one other alternative is to use the name of the website is Flourish. So Flourish like provides some kinds of some types of charts that you can animate. It's not as sophisticated as what Clio Abrams make, but it's, I mean, like animated enough, I guess, for
Right.
a simple video.
Right. Thank you. I think the Adobe platform that you were mentioning is an Adobe After Effects.
Yes. Yeah, that's the
Yes.
name of the software. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So I think, and in addition to that, we could also make a very extensive use of Canva. Even the free version that there is, it has a lot of options for elements and basically making a particular content piece very engaging. And I think for someone who's starting out or in the beginner stage, or not working with the entire team of maybe graphic designers and motion designers like Clio's or people from at a Clio level will have. I think to make good use of generative AI softwares, platforms like Adobe After Effects, as well as Canva would be very helpful up here. I also have a few questions that our audience has submitted with us in the registration forms. I would like to flash them so you can take them up one by one. I think one of the most asked question was that for a topic that's very large, scary, and also complex because of the amount of data, the amount of research reports and statistics it involves, how can we basically make it engaging and easy to digest when it comes to like a social media content? And I think it also helps when we keep the attention span in mind. If I am out there on Instagram, maybe scrolling, I will not have a longer attention span as that of a YouTube video. Versus when I'm on my phone reading an article, those kind of things, how do we balance them all together when we're making these content stories for ourselves and for the audience? Ushar, would you like to take them up?
Yes, thank you, Aishwarya. So how to create social media content that is engaging and interesting for a topic that is large, complex, and scary. It is not large, it is not complex, it is not scary. That's what you have to tell yourself, because I think 90% of the content that you put out there is actually research. 10% is the content that you actually craft and put together, which is concise of the 90% research that you do. So how can you create this content? I'd say do research as much as you can. And when you need help, reach out. Really, there is no shame in reaching out and messaging. Like, you're already here, you're part of the Climate Tracker family. You already know me, you know Kuka, and you know Gaea, you know Aishwarya, you know Vienna. So reach out if you ever do feel like you come across any topic that may seem a bit scary or a bit complex for you to understand, because it is a learning process, not only for you, but also for me. Because I still reach out to my senior editors or my colleagues if I do not understand certain terminology, I do not understand certain topics. But again, how can you create this is by doing research, because you have to be responsible for what you put out there. You have to make sure that you are not spreading misinformation or disinformation. So always it's a lot of research. And when you start reaching a point where you are like, oh my God, I'm a bit scared, this is a very big topic, don't worry, just reach out and you'll get the help where you need. Because sometimes looking at someone else's perspective is also great, because then it gives you a better idea of how to tell your story. So tell yourself that it's not large, it's not complex, and it's not scary, and you can start off from there.
Got it. That is very helpful. I think I'm also taking a bits of this from my own content creation journey back in India. Moving to what's the next question? Again, one of the most asked, content creation and the creator economy as a whole is something that can seem very intimidating because of maybe there are so many people doing it, or also because there's so many things to cover. So when it comes to creating specifically environment and climate related content, and let's even narrow it down to just the Southeast Asian regions, do you want to basically brainstorm on some top 3 strategies that we should follow when we are moving up there? maybe each one of you could take up a minute and talk about one tip from your own end. Gaia, would you like to go first?
Yeah. Um, I guess one strategy would be um viewing the climate crisis from a local perspective. Well, we all know that the climate change is um a global country. Sorry, a global problem. I'm sorry, but this global problem affects countries differently. So when we think of climate change, like the usual um image would be ice caps melting, but that image doesn't really resonate well with people in the Philippines. I mean, in Southeast Asia, we don't have snow here, you know, don't have glaciers here. So yeah, so we need to put local audiences in mind when we do climate stories. For example, here in the Philippines, I guess maybe content creators can explore how warmer temperature or um strong typhoons, which we always have every year, impact farmers and also the food production, since right now rice, the cost of rice here in the Philippines is a very big issue because it's been steep, and us Filipinos can't live without rice. And I mean, I think it's common also with those in Indonesia and Malaysia. And maybe you can also look into how warmer weather affects a fishing activity in in your own, if you're living in a coastal community, you can do that. Thus climate change further to go prompt them to go further from the shore, like that. So yeah, we really need to highlight how local communities are being affected by the climate crisis. And I think another one would be really focusing on um how climate crisis affects people. And that's why we've been really repeatedly saying that yes, it's a science-based story. Yeah, it can be complex, but if you put the face to your story, then um communicating climate change can be somewhat relatable and easy to do if there's like a people who can breathe life into the story that you're making.
Puka, do you have any strategies up on top of your mind that one should keep follow through when making environmental related content?
I think I concur with Gaia. I mean, like, we really need to make these contents to be relatable for the audience. So because I think that's the most important thing, to make sure that the audience see this content. But maybe you can I think the avoid complicated technical terms, something like that, because just keep in mind that not everyone understands about those technical terms, like uh net zero emissions, or carbon credit, carbon tax, what else, yeah, something like that. So make sure to to explain it in the simplest way to the audience, to make sure that they understand. And the uh I'm talking about the how journalism works, but the the best way to test if if your story or if your content can be understandable enough, is to test it with someone else. For journalists, it with the editors. For content creators, you can use your friends or other people to say, hey, can you watch this or read this or listen to this? Let me know if if you understand everything or if there's anything that you don't get, something like that.
Okay, well, very well said. I think when it comes to content, it also has to be accessible and easy to understand, because on social media, it would be tough to understand jargon, heavy context, and topics when they're explained as such. Ushar, what do you think?
Okay, thank you, Aishwarya. So strategies to keep in mind while educational content to raise awareness. And I have to agree with Kuka that while we understand the whole complexity that comes with climate change, there are a lot of people who do not understand. And one example that I can give was when I went down to Johor and I interviewed artisanal fishermen. And artisanal fishermen, when I asked them questions like, "What do you think? Have you experienced climate change?" and they just stared at me and they're like, "I don't really get what you're saying." So I think you as content creators have to be wonderful communicators by making difficult concepts easy for people to understand. For example, the same fisherman, instead of me asking him, have you experienced the impacts of climate change? I just asked him, have your whenever you go out and fish, have you experienced bad weather and a reduced number of catch for the day? And that's when he's like, oh yes, we do. I actually do experience a lot of losses this year. And then from there, you can explain like, okay, have you seen compared to 10 years ago, has the weather patterns changed? And then they'll explain it to you, because then this is something that they understand and it makes easier for them to explain to you, rather than going out there and being like, okay, let's talk about climate change, let's talk about impacts. Because we have to remember there are a lot of coastal communities that are affected by the impacts of climate change from extreme weathers in the ocean. And it's difficult to get questions if you can't communicate at their level. So like I really do agree with Kuka. You have to keep it relatable. You have to understand that not everyone understands certain jargons and terminologies like you do. So when you do speak to people, put yourself in their shoes. What is something that you do not understand and you want help understanding? So always remember that when you tell stories, it's not for you, you are telling their stories. So try and keep it as simple as most less complex as possible. Less is more, because really when it comes to climate stories, there are a lot of communities that are impacted, and where you can get wonderful stories is actually if you go out on ground and speak to these communities. They are a handful of stories. There are a gold mine of stories for you to dig out, and all you have to do is just sit down there and chat with them. Sometimes it's just chatting with them over a cup of coffee and you get like 5 stories. Really, it's that.
I think that's the one tip coming from the journalist side of Ushar, that go out on the ground and find stories before, or like waiting for stories to come to you. Now that we are delving deep on what a climate story is, and Anika has also asked it very rightly, what does a compelling story comprise of? So when we at Climate Tracker, we're looking for content creators to join our upcoming cohort, we're also stressing on the fact that, we're looking for compelling climate stories. But how do you know that what a compelling story is? And I would particularly like Puka and Gaea to take up this question, since you have worked with climate stories as such. And Gaea, you would be someone who has also kind of been on the other side of the table, selecting compelling stories and judging them. What are the key things that you're looking for in a compelling story? Kuka, would you like to take this first? What are these important stories? How are we framing these ideas, and where to look for them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like stories you can find them. Yeah, this is not really helpful, but I would say that you can find them everywhere. That's why I usually spend hours of my days calling Twitter or X or Instagram to look for story ideas. If there's some things happening out there, sometimes Twitter get it first, even before the local journalists. Or maybe so first you can scroll social medias to like follow the development of like the ongoing stories, or perhaps like as people, as NGOs, or even like the common people out there, as your friends, as your families, if they have something like complaints perhaps, or of anything that's been changing, like for example, in Indonesia especially, we have this prolonged dry season right now. So the dry season is getting longer and longer. And then, maybe you can ask your friends or family, like, do you have any, like, do you feel anything differently? Like maybe you get sick more often than the previous year, something like that. So yeah, that's where to look for them, and then how to frame them. That's yeah, that's also an interesting question. So I usually look for like the most shocking thing, and then tie it with the I would say like the larger context, like if people come to the clinic more often than in the past, maybe because of the heat waves or something like that, and then do your research and look if there's any connections, and then if you find any answers, and that can become your story idea, something like that. Yeah, I realize that might be not really helpful, so maybe I'd pass it away to Gaia.
Yeah, I think what really makes a climate story compelling is when um the stories, draw on the common experience of people, like something that they deal with every day. Like, well, we all know that climate change affects us in many ways. So maybe you can start by, okay, how can climate change affect the food that I eat? That's one. Uh and then maybe also ask, how can it affect the water that I drink? And even, the sports that I enjoy. Like, well, um, sports and climate change, I mean, they're not really, very well reported about, but as I have mentioned earlier, climate change affects many facets of our lives, even sports, even fashion, even culture, even our own homes. In 2021, I did a story about um residents of socialized housing projects here in the Philippines. So these residents, they were relocated to this um off-city housing project by the government because they used to live in what government officials called danger zones of Metro Manila, which is the capital. So the government moved them to a neighboring province because the government thought that, okay, if you move here, you would be, free from danger. But what happened was that place actually was an even more dangerous place for these people who are, usually um composed of, I mean, these people are urban poor dwellers, and that area where they were moved, where they were relocated, it's very exposed to climate hazards. Like whenever there's a storm that hits the Philippines, for sure that village will be flooded, and we all know that the Philippines, on average, the country is hit by an average of 20 cyclones per year, and climate change is making this cyclones stronger. So yeah, maybe you can also look at that from that angle, like view it from the housing angle. So, and you will realize that, oh, climate change also affects um people's right to adequate housing. So those are stories that are experienced by common folk that they don't realize that is being exacerbated by the impacts of climate change. So if we could report more on those types of stories, highlighting the plight of marginalized people, like indigenous peoples, urban dwellers, the women. From there, we can, create stories that would resonate with a lot of people. Yeah. Thank you, Karish.
Right. Thank you, Gaia. I think it also clears the air on, what makes a story compelling and what makes a climate story compelling. We were having another discussion in the chat box. And I think it's very rightly pointed out that good climate journalism, when we see at the bottom line, it will not be about climate. It will be about people. It will be about people who are being affected by it. The numbers definitely add up to the intensity of the situation. But as a reader and also as a creator, I think it would be more helpful and more thought-provoking when I know what this particular instance and what this particular crisis is doing to me and my community and my generations to come. And when it comes to climate stories, finding them, of course, social media, newspapers, research articles, all these are great resources. But as Ushar and Kuka have also mentioned and reiterated this in our call today, that these stories are around us and these stories are about us, about people in power, and about just how we are being affected by certain things and how people around us are maybe navigating through it. When we're basically figuring that particular cause, we can come up to the level that we're identifying how governments should act on certain things, how policymakers should act on these things. I would like to take one last question that Anika has asked, that how do we know what is relatable to people when there's insufficient research measuring people's response and knowledge to climate change at the moment? I think if I am to comprise it in short, would be maybe where do we draw the line between creating relatable content and creating important content? Am I getting this question right? And would either three of you like to take this up?
Hi, Aishwarya. I'll take this question up. So wait, let me go back to that question from Anika. Was it about trends, or was it which is relatable content that should be created? Okay, so I think the bottom line with telling climate stories is not so much on the trends. I think you should focus less on the trends and more on the voices that you want to put out there, because at the end of the day, it is these voices that will be the drive of your main storytelling. Because there are many times, like, yes, there are trends that you can talk about, like, for example, COP28. Everyone wants to talk about COP, but a lot of people do not understand COP, and this is a very complicated topic to talk about. But if you speak about, this is one issue in Malaysia currently that's happening. It's breaking news since last week, is rice shortage. So rice shortage is obviously caused by the terrible and extreme weathers that's been happening in Malaysia in the last 3 months. So how you could get so that's the trend, that's the news hook, that you understand that there's been a rice shortage. So the story that you can put out there and the content that you can create is actually, if you were a Malaysian content creator, you could go and drive to a paddy field and try and speak to a paddy farmer and try and understand the struggles of this paddy farmer. And it doesn't have to be fully statistics. While you do need statistics, you need facts, you need voices that will carry the story, because these are the people that are currently being impacted by the actual effects of climate change because of droughts. Because of droughts and there's not enough rain, paddy output is low. When paddy output is low, his income has dwindled, which means that his whole life is being affected just because there was droughts in the last 3 months. So you could actually tell his story rather than trending stories that you see, fancy stories. Usually it's not that. Climate stories is always about people. Another topic that you could talk about is water. I think water is all around us. But who are these people who are being impacted by the lack of water caused by droughts, and how has this impacted their life? So I think that's not so much of a trend that you should be worrying about. I think it's the stories and the voices that you want to highlight, because at the end of the day, these people are your trends. These people are living the hardship that's caused by climate. And I think this is how you get stories, because sometimes like he'll tell you one problem and then he'll tell you about another issue, and somehow it's correlated, and there you have it. You have a connection between these two stories.
Right. Thank you so much, Ushar, for throwing light on that. I think it, again, as a user, I will come here as a user who's scrolling through social media. It would already, feel that we are watching these relatable reels, all the trendy content, but it also has to be something about the impact that we want to create, the kind of stories that we want to tell. Because when it comes to making these stories, the longevity of this will be definitely a gaming factor here. Kuka, would you like to add some concluding points before we bring this to close?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with Ushar that climate story is not about following trends. It's about highlighting the people's voices. Because that's our power. I guess telling voices from the grassroots, or from the common people about their concerns or what they have been experiencing in the age of this climate crisis. But if you really want to know what's really trending out there, I was thinking that you can start with from people around you. I usually often if I really need to or want to write about the climate stories, but I don't have any ideas, I sometimes ask my friends or families of what they're really what they are experiencing, or maybe, like I said, if they have any complaints or on something's really big or maybe small that's changing, and then you go ask some more people and to see if it's really a trend out there. So yeah, that's there you are. You have your trend. If like for example, if you have more people visiting the hospitals or clinics because of the heat waves, I guess, or the respiratory problems from the pollution, which is exacerbated by the climate issues, and there you go. You have your story. So yeah, I would also suggest it, talk to more people, talk to a lot of people to know what's trending out there, and simply ask, what do you know, or what do you want to know more about the climate issues? Sometimes it helps you in in creating the content. Yeah, I think that's all.
But that sums it up really well. Thank you so much, Kuka, Ushar, and Gaea, for sharing all these brilliant insights. And I think our conversation today has been very resourceful when it comes to figuring the content part of it and the tech part of making being a content creator, which is why I'd like to bring all of your attention to our Content Creators Hub. We are currently looking for storytellers belonging to from Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. There is no bar to what kind of content creator you can be. You can apply as a journalist, a writer, artist, even exploring different forms of content creation across design, visual, and audio-based mediums. We're looking for podcasters, fact checkers, photographers, filmmakers, and even data visualizers. All whatever your field may be, please consider applying to a Content Creators Hub. There are a lot of benefits in scope for you. Our mentors and our team will be training you with all the multimedia and storytelling platforms and tools. And when it comes to, I think we were also discussing in the chat box, connecting with the science-based climate organizations and, finding that network. I think that's what we at Climate Tracker Asia are working very hard towards. We have a bunch of opportunities to be featured on our social media and basically building this like-minded creative network. And I hope that you will apply to our fellowship program. And please definitely share the word ahead with colleagues, people from your school, people from your universities, so that we can also reach out to more and more content creators across these regions and get them and help and empower to up their game into the climate storytelling network. I think that would be it from me. Thank you so much. 30th September, that is the end of this week. So I'm dropping the application link in the chat box. Please do consider applying and do share it with your network as well. And if you have any suggestions, any feedback for us, drop it in the chat box. We're manning it right now. And my last request would be, if you can, please open up your cameras so we could take a nice little picture of this lovely evening that we've had. Everyone, thank you so much. Please open up your cameras so we can take a little picture before we close this session. Okay, we have a bunch of us. I will take a picture now. 3, 2, 1, smile. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this was helpful for your evening, and we would love if we can be a part of your content creation journey. Do consider checking out our Content Creators Hub and applying to our program. Thank you so much.